Here's a tutorial on Lion Sleeps Tonight. This is from the Adult Faber Piano Adventures Book 2, page 38. So I always tell students whenever we come across a piece or song that is a pop song, the arrangement for piano sometimes is not quite what we're used to hearing. So there might be some rhythmic things that don't quite line up with the original song, but in any case, this is still a pretty good arrangement, I think. And we get to practice chords within F major, and we get to incorporate the swing rhythm. So the long, short, long, short. So when you come across the we mowes, those are going to be swung eighths, as we call them. So let's dive in. For the first 4 bars, we have this little opening here, actually up until when the lyrics start at measure 10. But going into this rhythmic situation here, which is actually pretty common throughout the entire piece, where we have a tie in, so within the measure, and it's on the weak part of the beat. So we have, if we're isolating measure 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4. So it kind of gives that syncopated feel. And then we do have ties that also go across the bar line, like the O at the end, measure 3 into 4, right? But majority of the ties will be within the measure itself. Okay, so that on its own is going to take some getting used to. So really taking into account the subdividing. So let's see, just trying the first 4 bars. I'm going to count out loud still, so we're on the correct timing, but let's try it out. Ready, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and rest. Okay, going into chords. So if we're in the key of F major, F chord, going into the 4 chord or B flat major, just the bottom 2, 3, rest, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1. So with this whole finger switching business on these particular bass measures, you don't have to switch necessarily right at the end of the measure. You could even switch sooner, like right after the 2, or you could go 5, 2, 1, or 5, 1, 1, or 5, 5, 5, 5, 1. But that might be a little tricky for some people. So keeping the 2. I've even seen some people do this and then reach straight for thumb. And that way you can reach the 5 on F much easier. So up to you. I'm just going to do what's written here for now. But keep in mind, those are some options you could try. Okay, let's put it all together. So the first 4 bars. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, so now we're at the we mowes. So these are going to be the same even on page 2 with the huimoes. So the first page does have a first and a second ending, but if we really look at those two endings, they're literally the same notes, just a slightly different rhythm. So measure 8 versus second ending. So that quarter note pulse at the end. Okay, so for chords in our right, we have measure 5, measure 6 with the B flat, don't forget. Measure 8, thumb extension. So they're all really close to each other. And I would highly recommend not adding the swing yet. You can definitely add that in later, but I would keep it straight, even though it doesn't sound as good. Measure 8. Just to get like a nice pulse, and then eventually we'll talk about the swing. Meanwhile, the bass, 2, measure 8. So you have 1, 2, 3 notes total with rests in between. So if we were to try the huimoes, you could practice it like this. Oh, sorry. Just hold. Or you could do just when it changes. So a few different ways to practice that. And the one thing I want you to remember with the repeated chords, the goal with those is to keep those really consistent and even. So we don't want to hold on to any particular note, even though it is repeating the same each time. Hearing every note really crisp and clean and even. So we don't want to hear this either. Keep it all the same. Okay, so let's put it together, and we are going to do first and second ending. So we'll go a little bit slower. Ready, and 1 and 2. Measure 5. Measure 7. Second ending. Hold. Let's take a look at when the lyrics come in. So this is at measure 10. So pretty similar to what you did in the opening, with the melody and the rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, measure 11. Here's a thumb extension. 2, 3, next measure. Two, 3, rest. And then it goes back into the huimoes. So now focusing on the left hand. So again, pretty similar to the opening. 2, 3, measure 11. 2, 3, back to F chord. 2, 3, rest. Here's a full octave. So let's try that transition. Measure 12, rest, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Back to F, 2, 3, 4, 15. 3, the C's gonna come again. 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So that one you want to watch out for because the notes keep going lower. So there is that finger switching. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So you could follow what's on the page, which is 1, 5, 5, 2, 1. Then your 5 is there. Or you could go 5 or 1, 5, 2, 2, 1. Or there is that option of doing 5, 5, and then while you're holding. Either way. So I would definitely experiment which is more comfortable for you in the end. But yes, keeping in mind 2 and 3 and 4. Then we go to the Wemoas. So we're not going to go over that again because we did that at the first page. Putting it together. So if you want to practice right hand with me or left hand or both, feel free to do so. I'm looking at measure 10. Ready and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and here comes the finger switching. 2 and 3 and 4. So acknowledging the rests in between for the bass. Okay, so now we're at the last 2 lines here with the was at 22. So noticing here we have the same rhythm as similar to the beginning, but we go 4 da da. So really accenting that second eighth note and hold. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and hold. Rest, rest. And then that is actually played twice. Considering the transition coming from the Wemoas at 21. So technically, you were doing a thumb on C, and then you only have one measure of one beat of rest to locate the FA. So I would definitely focus in on that transition. But if we're starting at 22, here are the chords, thumb extension. So with the B flat in there, I don't want you being out here and then having to reach up really suddenly. So just keep it in the middle there, roughly. And then repeats. Okay, so when we put it together, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Repeat. And off. 27. So you've done this before. 2 and 3 and 4. Slow down. Yeah. So this is another situation where you could technically change that fingering on the penultimate measure. So second measure from the end. So if you don't want to do like actually it was this on 28 and then you had to go 2, you could go 5 and then do that whole finger switching like before. Or you could do, whoops, I'm mean, it's a pretty big jump, but technically this could also work. 1, and just stay with the 1. So again, experiment what works for you on that, because that is quite a big leap there. Okay, for pedaling, notice that the pedalings occur every time you have the ba 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 in the bass, and those are really the only times where we have the pedal markings, and everything else will be no pedal. Okay, so to end this video, I'm gonna go ahead and play both hands with, oh yeah, before I forget, let's talk about the swing. So with the swing, when we see a group of 2 eighth notes beamed together, that's gonna be treated as a long, short. Hold less. Long, short, long, short, long. So that's kind of how swung eighths work. And you see this a lot in jazz, of course, but we will be adding those in with the back-to-back parts with the eighth notes. So it would sound like. And you would only do it for the pairs, so not quarter notes, nothing else, just the pairs of eighth notes. So it's a little bit trickier with the ones that have the ties on them, so I don't know if you can tell. So here's without, and then here's with. So it's a very subtle. It's a little bit longer on the first group of eighths, 2 eighths. But hopefully you can hear that as I play through the whole piece, whole song. So here we go.